the product team on a regular basis?
Yeah, so we started doing this a couple of months back. Actually, like probably just a month back. So we had Michael Siebel as our first kickoff one. That was good. We had Brian Balfour to talk about Reforge. You're our third, so thank you for joining. We have Ali Rogani joining next time.
Oh, nice. I love Ali.
And we're actually going to have Shadi interview him, so it'll be like Persian on Persian tea or something. So and then a couple other folks coming in after that as well. So like VCs, CEOs, different executives, have some other folks lined up that are neither of those categories. Will be more fun. So so thanks for joining. So kicking it off, so this is Amplitude's product Fireside. Excited today to have Laura Behrens-Wu, co-founder and CEO of Shippo. Shippo is a platform for e-commerce merchants to automatically leverage different shipping carriers from one API and dashboard. They obviously process millions of shipments every month and have close to, I think, about 200 employees. Recently raised a Series D, which brought you to about $500 million valuation. So congratulations, Laura. And Laura herself is originally from Germany, went to college in Switzerland, and then while studying abroad at Harvard, got wind of startups in that sector. And then she joined another YC startup called LendUp, which drew her to Silicon Valley and has been here ever since. I assume you're still here. I don't know where you are in the world right now. So
I'm still here.
Cool.
Today in Sonoma, but normally in San Francisco. Yes, I'm still here.
Nice. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Starting off, clearly you had a very kind of like multicultural background growing up. You lived in many different countries, from Germany to Switzerland to the US. I think taking a step back from your early kind of experiences, sharing where they went on the company here, like how do you feel those experiences shaped your beliefs, or maybe how every different place contributed in a different way to your work ethic and how you think about that looking backwards? And start there.
Yeah, that is a hard question. I think it starts with, there was a reason why I left Germany or Switzerland. And I was actually honestly just talking about it with a Swiss friend the other day. And I was talking to her about how I probably don't want to raise my kids in Germany, just because Germans are too strict and like everything's verboten and like you're not allowed to do anything. And it kind of restricts your thinking around like you have to stay in the lane, you have to stay within the rules. The rules don't always make sense. But yeah, Germans are like very keen on calling you out as well when you're not sticking to the rules. So if you're like crossing the road and the light is still red, you'll for sure hear someone yelling at you. And so anyway, they're good about policing each other. And then my Swiss friend was saying like, look, in Switzerland, like the Germans are considered the fun people. And I think she's right. Like in Switzerland, it's even worse in that dimension. I think there are lots of dimensions where Germans and Swiss people are excellent. They're really good at infrastructure, really good at high quality. So there's always like a pro and con to each culture, but that also means like kind of more narrow-minded. And then when I came to the US, it was like just a different level of thinking, both in college, but then also in Silicon Valley. Like suddenly everything seemed possible. And like if I were to build a company in Germany, I think people would just like, the first question would be like, who are you to like think you can do shipping better? Like, well, I've never, I don't know. I'm just looking at it from a slightly different perspective, but it's not as if I've been in the shipping industry before. So it's like culturally, I think the US is really good for starting a company and for doing things differently. And people are very open-minded about that. So I've enjoyed that. And like in the sense of like some anecdotes, like when we were fundraising for our first like $25,000 that let us like drop out of like what we were previously doing and like not take a salary anymore. The person I pitched, like his approach was kind of like a spray and pray approach. And meaning like you just write lots of small checks and like one of them might work out, but it was not a ton of due diligence. And you literally said to me and my co-founder, like, I don't understand your idea, but you're like, you have an entrepreneurial sparkle in your eyes. So here's 25K. And that allowed us to move to Sunnyvale, actually, where we just stayed in a like smaller place and built our MVP. So yeah, I think there are lots of like each culture is unique, lots of different aspects to it, but the like San Francisco culture just seems excellent for for building and for being optimistic. And optimism is contagious. I look at that in terms of hiring as well. Just like wanting to find people who think like, yes, we can do it.
So it seems that like you feel the culture in Silicon Valley is more conducive to first-time entrepreneurs as well as people who don't have a background in certain, like they're willing to they're more risk loving, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're more risk loving. And I think a few other examples would be when I was starting to actually fundraise, like for larger amounts of money. I did think like the school I was in Germany, in Switzerland, it's not known at all here in the US, but it's kind of known in Europe. So like, why not talk to European VCs first? And I did, and like they asked for 5 and 10 year financial projections when the company was less than a year old. So it was really, really hard. And then I came back, I decided to just focus on US VCs, and that worked much better. It wasn't easy either, but at least like we were having conversations about things that made sense. And people are more willing to look at the possible upsides and not just like try to figure out what the potential downsides could be, what the problems are. And I really like that mindset of like looking at potential solutions, looking at the opportunity, looking at the size of the market, and not about like, you've never done shipping before, or like, all of the reasons why this couldn't work.
So on that question, like when you came to the US, why did you want to start a company and why shipping?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think the starting a company was, so first I was working at a company called LendUp, and they're a small startup, or back then they were a small startup. I think by now they're pretty big as well. But yeah, small startup right out of YC at that point in time, 20 people. And we wanted, like the founder was getting us ready to raise a Series A. So there were some like growth targets he had in mind to make the chart look good. And we're just like, I think it was 20% month over month growth. We're trying to hit that. And it was a really like unifying feeling, like a small team, we're all working on the same thing. And everyone had an impact. I was an entry level person at that point in time. Like whatever idea I could come up with, we'd just do it, and we try it. And there's never a bad idea. So that was really awesome. And then I think it was just also different from the kind of I've interned at other companies beforehand, and it was larger companies where like the entry level person should stay, like just do their entry level job and just like then. Yeah, so it was different kind of culture, and I was excited about that entrepreneurial culture and wanted to just keep doing it. And my now co-founder and I, we actually know each other from school in Switzerland. He had founded companies before in Switzerland, and like yeah, we were catching up and decided to just build an e-commerce store. Because it seemed like a good place to start. Like everyone is doing e-commerce. It's fairly straightforward.
What was the store selling?
Yeah, it was selling, actually, like the idea was like people want products that are unique. So let's like feature and highlight artists and like producer or manufacturers from all around the world that could tell a story. And we like didn't want it to be a marketplace because of the chicken and egg problem. So we were like buying inventory and like telling the story of that person making it and then selling it from the like out of the living room. And I think honestly, like that idea, there are so many companies doing that. There's so many companies trying to do that, but it was a good place to start because it got us to the shipping space. Yeah. And we realized that like having inventory in the living room means we have to like go to the post office to ship it out. And that's not an enjoyable experience. And then the website, like a USPS or UPS FedEx website, is not nice to navigate, and their API documentations are terrible. So from there, we got into just the challenge of shipping, and decided that it was too hard for, like, if it's hard for us, it's hard for other people too, and it shouldn't be this hard, especially compared to like a Stripe API or a Shopify product that are really easy to navigate. And I think that the other aspect here is just because Stripe and Shopify and other companies have made it so easy for you to start a store and become a merchant expectations around shipping are that shipping software should be easy and intuitive and straightforward as well.
So did you apply to Y Combinator with the e-commerce store idea or with the shipping idea?
Yeah, so we applied, I think we applied multiple times, like first with the e-commerce store idea and then with the shipping idea. So yes, there were multiple iterations of this, but we'd always applied when the application was available. But I think that the main part is just like, it was difficult, and it shouldn't have been as difficult, and we wanted to figure that out. And then from there, kind of one thing led to the other. We never actually started a new entity. We just used our existing like Delaware company to like reuse it for this. And kind of like, it was no grand plan, just like one like step by step. And then we kind of got to, okay, this makes sense. Customers are using it, and it makes sense to keep focusing on that.
So on that point, so like, I think one of the classic things in product management is knowing when to stop working on one idea and move on to the next one. So how did you, and I think some of the best companies are always, you build something and you find another problem that you want to solve.
Yes.
Sounds like you wanted to solve your own problem, you saw a
Yes.
larger opportunity. How did you know that e-commerce store thing with most of the story idea
Yes.
was not the right thing?
Yes.
How long did you give yourself? And then how did you know the next idea was the better thing?
Yeah. So I don't think there was a real aha moment, but what like contributed was actually like ideating with other people. So I would tell other people what we're working on, including actually, yeah, like just talking it through with friends. And then the founder I worked for at LendUp, he knew that I wanted to start something. So it was like a very open thing, and I was able to talk to him about ideas. And he had this thing where he said, like, build something that's a painkiller, not a vitamin. And just realized, like, you know, there are lots of e-commerce businesses out there selling products that are nice to have. And then, but every e-commerce store needs to ship. And if they can't figure it out, it's just a real pain point. And existing shipping solutions are bad, so they're feeling the pain. It's just easier to like build a product or sell something where customers, if you just are feeling the need, and they can't go about running an e-commerce business without a shipping solution. So I kind of got pretty lucky there, just having found a product like that, or an industry like that. But I think that was part of it. And then we did start just selling or like talking to customers, and got really good customer feedback early on. And to be frank, like not a ton of people bought from our e-commerce business. So it was a good comparison. Like there was lots of interest for the API, the shipping API, but not a ton of interest for another e-commerce store. And I think two things to call out. I do think that in hindsight, like I'm looking at customers that do best on Shippo right now, because we're working with e-commerce companies, and like the e-commerce companies that do really well, they have a strong brand, they're telling a unique story. So I think we were on to like the hypothesis was right. Like consumers want to buy from a brand, they want to like hear the story of the people making the product, and they want to have some kind of emotional connection with what they're buying. They want to follow the store on Instagram and all of that stuff. It's like that made sense, but like we just didn't have anything to stand out. And I'm really glad that our customers are doing it well, but I think like this problem was more suitable for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. Did you follow the company Adams?
Yeah, Adams is a great example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where they had the Humans of New York story, yes. And like I think that spiked their sales. Like
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I know Adams is a really, really good example of how like you're telling a story, people feel like connected to the founders. But the founders are also, I think now, highlighting other artists and let other artists design shoes on their website. So it is really, really cool. But yeah, we had something similar like that in mind. Just, I think it's very, very hard to stand out. And we just chose the other route of like, let's do shipping then. So one other thing to call out around shipping, I think when we first designed our product, or like first thought through what our product should look like, we wanted it to be Stripe for shipping, so an API for shipping, connecting to shipping providers. And honestly, like that, while it's working very well right now, like that was not a good place to start, because our customers didn't want to integrate an API and do a whole lot of dev work for like something that's unproven, with 0 packages going through it and zero proof points that this API would work. So at the beginning, we decided to attract like much smaller customers. And the downside there was that these tiny customers, they couldn't read or understand any API docs. They didn't have any developers employed, like working with them either. So we had to build a dashboard on top of our API to start like bootstrapping that volume first. before larger customers who could integrate our API started becoming confident that we can actually provide the uptimes and what they're looking for.
Why didn't you start with larger companies that knew how to use the API, and why did you start with the smaller ones?
We tried. I mean, we tried, and the larger companies were the first companies that I talked to, just because they were very obvious to me in terms of like brand names and people to email and LinkedIn message. And they were interested, like there was interest in the product, but the question was always, so why should we allocate, like shipping is a critical part of the infrastructure, and they need to allocate developer resources to integrate an API. So why should they do that if there is no volume going through our API just yet? And how can they trust that we could handle their volume? So I think these are really legitimate questions. And we just decided, okay, let's go after the tiniest customers first, aggregate volume through that. And the tiniest customers won't ask these questions because they're still bootstrapping themselves. And yeah, so that's how it worked out in the end.
So essentially, you feel that as a new entrant into the market, you have to prove yourself with the little people. Sorry, it's a weird thing to say, but like, because they're the early adopters are willing to bet on a new horse, and then that allows you to go a stepping stone to the larger companies.
That's what it was for us. I don't know about, I mean, there are other companies that are being built in like as an enterprise first company. So I must work in other ways as well. But for us, given that we were, like we back then didn't have a ton of funding either. We wanted to like not spend a lot of time on developing the perfect product. We wanted to just start getting revenue or getting volume going through our API. And yeah, so we decided to go after the smallest customers first. They don't ask a ton of questions. They're just looking for like products that work for them, and then slowly expand out market. And we're still in that journey. If right now we're like good with what we call high volume SMBs. So we further segmented the SMB segment. So that's where we're like very strong at. And then we want to go into mid-market. There are features missing for that. So we're expanding our feature set in order to be able to do so.
Got it. I want to drill down to that. You mentioned the thing about vitamins versus painkillers. What are like maybe 3 facets of a feature that's just a vitamin? And then what's 2 or 3 facets of that you know this is going to be a painkiller, right? It could be qualitative, quantitative. How do you distinguish the 2?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, okay, I think there are a few, like, I'll give you examples as well, but I'll start in a more abstract way. I think like painkillers are, you know, it's a showstopper. If you don't have this feature, like you just can't run parts of your business, or you can't do something. And then vitamins are like, you can do something incrementally better. Like you were able to do it beforehand, now you can do it slightly better. And then there's a question of like, do you want to like sell them on a slightly better performance, or like, why would they switch? Like it takes effort and resources to think about a new product and switching. And then for us, like the way we think about it right now is like the shipping label, like giving our customers access to shipping labels, like that is the painkiller. Without the shipping labels, they can't ship. And then there's some, like we're actually having vitamin features right now as well, like shipping insurance. Like it is kind of nice to have. You think about it as an afterthought, like when you've printed out a label, you might need some insurance as well. But first you need to first we hook them on, like you need to get the shipping label, and then like there are other functionalities that are more nice to have later on, be it shipping insurance, be it like, I don't know, your own logo on the label. Like without a label, you can't even think about a logo on the label. Yeah.
Fair. Drilling into also a little bit more, not many companies are, I guess we're ignorant of, not many companies are in the shipping industry, or SaaS software companies.
Yeah.
What's different about running a SaaS? So you worked at LendUp, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of other software companies as well. What's different about Shippo in terms of either how your product has to function to work with these customers, and then even culturally, how have you had to be organizationally different to work in the shipping industry?
Yeah, lots of good places to start. I think it starts with like shipping is incredibly complex, and it's a very just the shipping industry is a very offline centric industry, with companies like FedEx and UPS and DHL and so on being built like they're from they're not modern tech companies. They don't really think like us, and they're not good at building technology either. They're really good at running infrastructure, and they're somewhat outdated in their thinking. And then the way we look at it is like we need to be this abstraction layer, abstracting away the complexity of the shipping providers and making sure that our customers don't have to deal with like whatever rules, I don't know, FedEx might have. And I'll give you the examples here. Like two examples that come to my mind today are like, on the one hand, shipping providers are really like slow in refunding a package that you haven't used. So instead of like passing through to our customers that the refunds are going to take 4 weeks, we just give them the refunds up front, and we'll figure it out with the carriers in the background. That's one example. Another example is like more on the API side. Carriers return error messages, or carrier APIs return error messages that are absolutely useless. So instead of just passing on the error messages to our customers, we need to map them to like words that make sense and pass that on to our customers. So there's a lot of like abstraction to be done to make sure that our customers are not interfacing with this archaic industry, but they're interfacing with us, and we make sure it works, and we figure out the archaic stuff in the background. That's good. I think it's complicated, but it's where it's a mode, it's where we can create more value. And then we are a transaction.
Almost like sometimes going into antiquated industries, you just do something that we're used to ends up being your moat, and it's defensible, and actually it ends up being valuable.
Yes, I think that is a great insight. I was talking to someone recently, and like the way they described it to me, just like repeating it back to me was like, oh, so you're just like, you're building shipping software the way people think shipping software should be built. Like, yeah, that's right. It's just that the carriers don't build it that way. So that's, it sounds simple, but like, again, there's a lot of just tiny random complexities in the background, and making sure that our customers never have to deal with it or think about it. And then our business, I think, compared to other SaaS businesses, is a transactional business, and then also a take rate business. So transactional, I mean, we at this point don't have a ton of subscription plans or anything like that. It's for every package shipped, there's a take rate. And in that sense, I think fairly similar to Stripe, and I think fairly similar to Twilio as well. And so it's not a traditional SaaS business in that sense. And then what that means though is like the potential to pitch is like, there are this many packages out there in the world, and we always have this take rate, and package volume is growing. Like if we just capture, let's say 30% of international volume, this is how big the company could be. And yeah, it's also pretty aligned. Like I like transactional businesses because when our customers grow, we grow with them. So we're not capped. Like when they become, a lot of our customers start as startups, and then they grow into pretty significant companies, and we're just like, we're growing with them, we're capturing the upside. So that's just another part about transactional businesses.
Makes sense. Last question before you start opening up to questions in the audience. So if folks have questions in the audience, feel free to put it in the comment, and then we'll get to it shortly. But what about Shippo's, like your employee culture? Do you feel being in this industry has any differences in terms of how you operate as a company, in terms of employees, organizational processes? Or what is Shippo's culture, and how have you scaled to 200 people and $500 million company over the years?
Yeah, I think on the culture side, we're explicitly trying to, like, it's a hard balance between like figuring out hiring for having people with shipping expertise, while also having people with the mindset of like, the status quo is not the best. It is not the best we can do, but we can rethink it and think outside of the box and like redesign how shipping should look like. So we've always tried to have a good. Oh, go ahead.
Drilling onto that point, actually, like you guys didn't start off as industry experts in shipping.
Yeah, we did.
When did you feel you had to hire the first experts, and why was that necessary?
Yeah, so I mean, we tried hiring experts various times over the course of the company, and it's never really worked because we always ran into the challenge of like people just thinking this is the way it should be, like this is the way it's always been, and it just didn't mesh really well with our mindset. But at this point, we have found a good team of like people who've been in logistics for a long amount of time and who are thinking like beyond the status quo. And it's working really well now. But I think it took us a few iterations to also identify like what questions to ask in the interviewing process. And expertise is important, because our shipping expertise is important in some aspects of the business, because we're trying to be the shipping experts for our customers, and we need to give our customers recommendations. We need to tell them how to ship better. So it is important in that aspect. And yeah, it's just taken us a few iterations to figure out how to interview for the right mindsets. But that kind of leads me to what you're asking for. I think in terms of values, or like how we look at the culture in the company, I think there's always just a very firm no asshole rule. And it's when you it's the fun part, or like the way I think about it is like, if I've started a company like not to work with assholes, right? Like I should be able to make sure that everyone at the company is pleasant to work with. If I wanted to work with people where I don't have the control who's being hired, like could have, I don't know, joined a much bigger company somewhere in Germany. But anyway, I care about like optimism, and I said that before, but solutions, like I think optimism is really contagious. Having people with the solutions oriented mindset, seeing the opportunities, not just all of the reasons why not. And that's like one, I think, important aspect as well around being entrepreneurial, because if like entrepreneurs, they tend to be optimistic people. And at the size of this company, we still need to hire people with that kind of entrepreneurial mindset. And I hope that we'll never have, like, I hope that we'll always be able to attract people like that. Then do really care about just people who are just passionate about hard challenges. Like it's this feeling of you solved something that was hard to solve, and I didn't think I could do it, but I did it, and that just feels so good. And it's a different approach from, like, I don't know, being afraid of hard challenges or shying away from them. Yeah, I think it's like bias to action, making decisions fast and short feedback loops is super important. And yeah, I'd rather make 10 decisions now instead of like waiting and talking for half a year and then making like 3 decisions. I think these are a few of like the most important things I care about. And that's kind of breaking down what it means to me to be entrepreneurial, just like risk seeking while also feeding the data set with learnings, being optimistic, being excited and passionate about hard challenges, and like obviously for the environment to be pleasant, just humble people who are not ego driven but enjoy collaborating and working together.
That's great. Yeah, I think some similarities with Amplitude as well. So seems there's some causal or correlated relationship to success in those qualities. That's great. So turning it to audience questions, Jeffrey, you had a question.
What's the funniest story?
Oh yeah, I can say it. Hey Laura, thanks for coming to speak with us. Really love your story of Shippo and growing it. Yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned obviously a lot of these shipping companies aren't really modern day companies and not thinking very forward about technology. We have the kind of opposite problem. Thankfully, we get to work with like PMs and tech companies, and it's great, and that makes it super easy. But I'm really curious to hear it. So some funny stories about working with companies that don't get tech.
Funny stories.
Maybe not funny, maybe painful. I don't know.
Maybe painful. Good question. So one like mind-boggling thing to me, and it's not funny, it's also not super painful. So, but I'll keep thinking. But like the USPS salespeople, they're incentivized to sell shipping volume, like shipping spend. They don't, because their technology, the USPS technology, is not that easy and fast to integrate. They're actually very happy recommending third-party software like ours. So they're a sales channel for us. However, because they're government reps, like we can't give them any incentives. We can't even, they can't even accept like a pen that's Shippo branded. So the way we work with them is we have just a group of like people, relationship managers, who are just really friendly and really talkative. And the USPS sales reps call them up and to talk to them about the weather, about their family, about their kids, and like how they did in their latest golf session, whatever it is. And like that's why they recommend Shippo, apparently. Like they like working with our sales, with our relationship managers. Our software works is faster to integrate than the USPS API. and it's an extension of our sales team, but we can't really incentivize them any other way except for being super nice and fun and friendly with them.
That's great. That is a funny story. Sales comes in all forms.
Yeah, and let's see what else. I mean, I can't think of anything else that's super funny, unfortunately. There are a lot of pain points. I think one that's painful for us is, we want to use our data. We have a lot of data points. Want to use our data to make shipping more transparent for our customers, like show our customers which service levels or which shipping providers are experiencing more delays, even on a more dynamic basis, like day by day. Want to tell them the quality of a shipping provider and which shipping provider is more reliable. And the shipping providers are obviously very protective around their data, so that's difficult. But I think it would provide a lot of customer value, like merchant value, to know this, and it's kind of like in our obviously our goal to make shipping more transparent. So that's where we're kind of clashing a bit. Yeah, and then just a fun fact about carriers: you can ship like alligators in with USPS. It's allowed to have, I think, a limit of the alligator needs to be smaller than, I think, 11 inches, but don't quote me on that. But if it's like a small alligator, you can ship it. I've always like wondered what happens if the alligator grows in the shipping process and like becomes 12 inches. Like, well, what are you going to do with that?
Who ships alligators?
I don't know. People in Florida? I don't know.
Ouch. Hilarious. Will, I think you had a question about experts as well. You put something in the comments. Do you want to follow up on that?
I can speak to that. It wasn't really a question, more just like a comment. The way that you mentioned, Laura, we tried hiring the experts several times.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like there was a lot to unpack in that statement. I'm curious if you could elaborate.
Yeah.
Trying to hire them, does that mean that, not to put words in your mouth, but
Yeah.
did I mean you like hired them and then it like didn't work out multiple times? Like, and what was that like?
Yeah.
Like, how did you like realize that this was a mistake?
Yeah. No, I think it was both. It was both in the sense of like we interviewed a lot of experts and felt like they weren't really a fit, and we didn't like enjoy the conversations as much. And then we've also like hired I think, let's see, at least one expert where we felt like it didn't resonate, like when they were thinking more within the boundaries of what's already existing instead of pushing the conversation forward to go beyond. And I'll give you examples, like the data stuff. I think, great, that's a requirement that the carriers, or something that the carriers tell us we're not allowed to do. But let's, like, if I think about it from the perspective of creating customer value, like our customers want to know when delays are happening. They just need to know that in order to deliver on consumer expectations. And given that we want to build the best shipping software, like we should tell them that. So, and thinking outside of the box here, like, if they don't allow us to say that USPS is delayed, maybe instead of putting the name USPS there, we color code it, and USPS is blue and FedEx is what is orange? Are they orange or purple? And
Purple
then
and
UPS is brown or something like that. It's like we could there are lots of creative ways around that, but like I want to think about those solutions instead of just like, no, we can't do it, and that's where we're going to stop the data project. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Next question. Haral, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so I posted one, I'm super inspired, especially as like a women founder and a women follower. What is kind of one unique culture or value we'll find at your company, but not anywhere else?
Culture, value. I think there's like, both the founders are Germans. My co-founder is German as well. I think there might be a little bit of that in there. Like Germans are, I wouldn't say it's unique. Lots of other people are very direct and straightforward as well, but Germans do have a little bit of a dry humor that's kind of off or weird. And that's like we see that coming through in all kinds of meetings, and I think people like enjoy it. I hope people enjoy it, or at least people haven't told me that they don't. Let's see, and I think just honestly, it is people join and they're not shipping experts beforehand, and like on it, probably they're not like super shipping experts compared to industry experts afterwards, but at least like they nerd out on the complexities. Like everyone I talk to after they've been onboarded, like a month and a half later, they say like, look, I didn't expect it to be this complicated, but it's really fun that it's this complicated. So kind of embracing, like enjoying those complexities and being excited about that. I think that I hope that's fairly unique. I don't know if it's unique, but we care about that.
Next question, Anna.
Hello. Hi, I'm Anna. I've been listening and really appreciate you taking the time. It's been really interesting to hear all about your company. I guess one of my questions was, has there ever been a product or a feature that you felt really strong about and that it failed? Either there was no adoption or it just didn't quite make it. And I'm curious, like, how did you know when to cut your losses and what was that decision process like?
Yeah, I'm sure there has been. So I think without answering your question directly, like one of the worst mistakes we've made in the past was to like start something, like start building a product, and then we realized like we need to divert resources because of some kind of either fire, and then this product never really gets finished. And then later on we say like, oh, like the tracking product doesn't work and our customers don't want tracking, when in fact we realized that, well, it's not like our customers don't want it because it's just poorly built. And I think it's been so I want to be a bit nuanced about that, where sometimes it's just we didn't build them, we should have followed through. Like we should have built a great tracking product and allocated the resources to that instead of like jumping on something else that came up halfway through. And it's unfortunately the realities of a startup. Like whatever we diverted the resources to probably needed to be done. It was a real fire drill. Like the majority of the times it is something that like a large existing customer says like we need tomorrow. And if we don't get it, we're going to churn. And I see people nodding, so it's probably like you guys might have experienced it too. But yeah, I think I ideally should have followed through on a few more of these, and then just judge it when we think it's at a stage where it's actually like very good and not just halfway built.
Can I ask a follow-up question too? Do you guys have any legacy like features that you built in the beginning that are now kind of a couple customers use that stick around, and how do you feel about putting energy into them? Do you sunset things?
So everything, so we have different API versions, of course. At some point we sunset the old versions, giving people enough heads up around that. And I think what we're seeing is, again, kind of answering your question slightly differently. Like sometimes we've built features in our dashboard that even though we're an API first company, we didn't build it API first. Like it is not in the API, it's only in the dashboard. And I feel I do feel regret around that. And the principle is we should build everything API first, and then sometimes there's just some shortcuts we took. And that's one example. I think another example, just in terms of architecture.
Laura, chiming in there, like why is that a principle? Is it just because you want a dog food, or is there some benefit being API first in this context?
Good question. I mean, yes, we want to use it ourselves. We want the dashboard to be a client of the API. But then also I think that the power of this is that you have both the dashboard and the API, that our customers can integrate the API and have the exact same functionalities, but also let's take automations as an example. Like right now, our automations product only lives in the dashboard. It doesn't it's not in the API. And I think that the downside there is that when our API customers want to figure out ways to automate, they need to build this themselves. And ideally, if we've done the work around the thinking that how an automations product should look like already, then we should make it just available both through the API and the dashboard. So that's a good example. But then it's just speed to market at times, and we shortcut. But yeah, it is a product principle that I'm paying more attention to now, especially after we've raised some more funding where we can actually afford doing things a bit more slowly and deliberately.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. So we're closing up on time, but thanks a lot, Laura. Do you have any parting thoughts or or parting thoughts of wisdom you have for us as we depart for lunch?
Not really. Let's see. I should have at some point said, and I think for this team, it matters like a lot as well. Like, it's always been for us about the customers. Like, it is like we're a B2B company, so customers go first, and we can't just design the smallest, like the whatever's in our head, and like every step of the way we have to talk to our customers and make sure we're actually building something that they want. So yeah, that's been really important overall, just customer centricity, and not just in product, by the way, also in like looking at customer support as not a cost center, but like an opportunity to like make a good impression and delight customers. So every interaction, be it on the product front or on the customer support side, just making sure it's delightful and it's actually like meeting the or covering the use cases that our customers are looking for.
Sounds good. I guess last question, any way we can help you?
No, I think no. I would have to think about it a bit more. But I guess if you have friends that are looking for new opportunities and for some reason they're interested in shipping, please send them my way.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Laura. Appreciate you coming on our fireside chat, and I will be in touch, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. You too. Bye.